Hey everybody. So this is obviously a bit of a different Dear Kevin episode. I'll be getting to Kevin Smith and you know, the whole point of the show. But I woke up this morning, which is why I probably look a little bit more fucked up than usual. I woke up and went to my Twitter to go check to see about my own petty personal bullshit. And one of the first things I saw was, you know, death at Paisley Park. It wasn't confirmed yet. So I immediately jumped around the internet trying to figure it out. I saw TMZ was the one leading the story, so I was like, maybe this is not true. Maybe this is not true. But it is. Prince is gone. So, I read a bunch of cool shit on Twitter. I wrote some things on Twitter. You know, I called my mother, called my father, listened to Purple Rain a little bit, went to go buy cigarettes and wine because I was out of alcohol and I needed something purple in my world at the moment. And I don't know, I wanted to say something. It seemed, I mean, this feels a little bit unseemly in and of itself, but I wanted to do something about Prince, and I didn't want to just do a, like, you know, R.I.P. Prince kind of thing. That's what Twitter is for, that's what Facebook's for. But I do have this platform where, you know, I talk about Kevin Smith things, and I hopefully have a bit of an audience now, and it allows me to say what I'm feeling sometimes. Similar to like that depression video I did 20 episodes ago or whatever it was. So Prince. I was born in 1989, so I didn't grow up with Prince. I mean, we all did. He was around on the radio, same thing with kind of Bowie. What a fucked up year, man. Bowie, Prince, and Rickman all in the same year. Somebody's trying to take all the magic out of the world. Anyway, when I was a kid, my dad showed me Tim Burton's Batman. It was like 4 or 5, and that's the first time I, heard a Prince song. In particular, that museum sequence where the Joker comes in and fucks up all the artwork, and one of his henchmen's got this huge fucking like 1980s boombox, and they play Prince's Party Man. That's the first time I really remember hearing Prince and falling in love with it immediately. That song is so goddamn catchy and fun, and as I grew up, I didn't really, Prince was not on my radar. My dad had introduced me to a lot of classic rock, but like not really the more funky side of things. So even Bowie I didn't really grow up listening to too much. When I was in high school, in the morning before catching the bus, back when MTV and VH1 used to play videos every once in a while, at least in the morning anyway, they would have their morning video, whatever. I would watch that in the morning waiting for the bus, or to go drive to school later when I got a car. And one morning, a song called Musicology came on, music video for a song called Musicology. And the video immediately hooked me in because it had like this old-timey, like 70s vibe to it. It kind of felt like watching The Sandlot, which I know takes place in the 50s, but like a very nostalgia-tinned remembrance of a time gone by. I think a couple of the actors in the video I recognized. And then the music started, and it was so fucking fun and catchy and funky and different from whatever else was playing, circa 2005 and 6. And I knew the name Prince, but I'd never really made the connection to his music beyond Batman. And that was the first Prince song I fell in love with, really, was Musicology. I bought the CD. That was one of my first, real CD purchases as a teenager. Ironically, a lot of people, I think, don't like that album very much, but that was my first Prince album. Like Kevin Smith always says, I think referencing Stan Lee, a quote he said, that, every comic book is somebody's first comic book. Even if it's issue 986, that may be somebody's first comic book. So, same kind of thing. Every album is somebody's first album. And Musicology was my first Prince album. That was my way in. I fell in love with it. My mother, had purchased a Prince compilation CD, so I started listening to Little Red Corvette and When the Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy in 1999. I could do this forever, all the fucking string of hits that Prince had. So, I kind of slowly grew an affinity for Prince, and by that point, I'd fallen deeply in love with Kevin Smith as well, and I followed him on his blog and stuff like that. And whenever he mentioned something that he liked or inspired him, I would want to go seek it out. I talked about this in other videos. I got into Spike Lee because because Kevin Smith talked about how to do the right thing was an inspiration for Clerks. That's how I started watching Spike Lee movies. I'd always kind of watched The Simpsons, but hearing Kevin Smith talk about The Simpsons gave me a better appreciation for it. Same thing with music. Kevin was asked on the blog years and years ago, what his favorite musicians were, and he named a bunch, like Run DMC and whoever. But he said Prince was one of his all-time favorites. And based on that, I started really paying attention and listening more to Prince. So that's, you know, I'll get to the Dear Kevin at the end, which is just going to be thank you, Kevin Smith, for introducing me to Prince. And then, of course, I talked about in my Evening with Kevin Smith video, there's the Prince story, where Kevin Smith tells a story of going to Paisley Park and shooting a documentary for Prince and having these amazing, batshit crazy, you know, conversations with him about all kinds of stuff. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I may add the video to like this playlist, maybe not, but you know, look it up, YouTube, Kevin Smith, Prince story. And even though that story kind of paints Prince as a bit of a, you know, crazy nutball, you can hear in Kevin's voice and in, you know, the way he talks about it, that there's still so much love and respect for Prince. Like, yeah, he's a genius and he's a bazillionaire and like, he's allowed to be a little bit eccentric. It's his royal purpleness, for heaven's sake. Same thing later on, you know, we all fell in love with the Chappelle Show. Anybody my age who the Chappelle Show happened when we were in high school, that was defining. Like, that was like fucking Andy Kaufman level brilliance, was the Chappelle Show. And he did the Prince sketch where Charlie Murphy goes to play basketball at Prince's house. So Prince has been a big part of my life for a while. I watched the movie Purple Rain in high school and was fucking blown away by it. I'd also gotten into Craig Robinson. No, not Craig Robinson. Craig Brewer. I like Craig Robinson too, though. Craig Brewer, who directed Hustle and Flow, and he directed the Dirty Dancing remake, and he directed my favorite, which is Black Snake Moan. He talked about in his commentary track how, you know, his favorite movies have all seeped into his work, and that Purple Rain is one of his favorites, and it's a lot of people's favorites from that, you know, that generation. Anybody who's like, you know, say 35 to 45 years old, or older even. Purple Rain was fucking huge. Like, I don't know if, you know, I have any like teenage fans or, you know, even my age fans who understand, but like, Purple Rain was fucking, it was the Beatles getting off the plane. It was the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. Like, this album, this movie launched the career, like, it was nuts. This dude became a fucking, he was like Elvis immediately. So, the movie is fantastic. As a filmmaker, there's so much in there that I admire. It's one of those movies that makes you want to make movies because it's so emotionally raw, and like, yeah, there are some flaws to it, it's a little bit rough at times, but the pure emotion behind the story and the character and the music is undeniable. So Prince ties into my world in a lot of ways. You know, I've got the nostalgia of finding him, I've got, you know, a great film from him, I've got the music, that some of the sexiest, most romantic fucking music ever, some of the silliest, most fun music ever, some really deep, you know, important songs as well. He's also, you know, my favorite song of Prince's is probably Let's Go Crazy, because it's all about, you know, life is hard, but fuck it, man. Like, at least we got friends, and there's something else later on, and let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Let's slip on a purple banana until they put us in the truck. So, I love Prince, and like I said, I had to say something about it, and I'm lucky enough to have this forum. You know, I started the show, so this is my Prince episode. I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. You know, R.I.P. your purpleness. I don't know. It's been a fucked up year for celebrity deaths and musical deaths in particular. So I guess I'll get on to the Dear Kevin of it all. Dear Kevin Smith, hello, sir. You always say that art begets art. You know, when you create something, it can inspire someone to create something else. And Prince, you and me, is very much an example of that. You know, Prince was one of the soundtracks to your childhood or to your adolescence. You know, I know you love the movie, so much so that you have that wonderful tribute to the finale with Morris Day and the Time at the end of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. For those who don't know, quick sidebar back to the regular audience, the finale of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where he dances with Morris Day and the Time in the nightclub, that production design is meant to represent the exact club from Purple Rain. Like, that was just a big full-on homage to one of Kevin's favorite movies. So, back to Kevin. Thank you, sir. You know, he inspired you to do what you do. He probably, you know, helped define some of your ideas about love and sexuality a little bit, the way music can. And you went on to make movies and talk about him, and, you know, reference his work in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and telling the Prince story. And that led me to fall in love with Prince. So much so that, you know, the script I just wrote, which is not on the blog or anything yet, but the script I just wrote, submitted to the Nickel Fellowship, there's a sequence in that movie where I had to insert a Prince song in my head anyway. The soundtrack of that movie definitely needs a Prince song, and of course it's Let's Go Crazy. In the animated film I wrote about the pet store, there's a sequence where there's some doves who are in a cage and they're screaming at each other because their parents were purchased the day before and they're freaking out, and they have a conversation about, you know, maybe we're just too demanding. Maybe you're just like your father, too bold. How could they just leave us standing alone in a world so cold? They're doing that. And one of the other characters says, why do they scream at each other? And the other character says, this is what it sounds like when the doves cry. Which is a cheesy joke, but it works, I think, for a kid's movie. So, Prince has been a huge part of my life, and it wouldn't be in the same way if it wasn't for you, Mr. Kevin Smith. If you hadn't told the Prince story, if you hadn't mentioned in some offhand blog post that Prince was an inspiration to you, you wouldn't have inspired me to reach out and try to listen to his music and fall in love with him in such a cool way. I've always been a guitar fan, so like he's one of the best guitarists of all time. Like as I got older, my music tendencies started to lean more towards jazz and funky stuff. And obviously Prince is one of the funkiest motherfuckers ever lived. So I got a text. Anyway, thank you, Kevin Smith. Very simple, dear Kevin, for this episode. Very simple episode, very sad episode, but I wanted to say something. So thank you, Kevin Smith, for introducing me to one of your heroes, one of your inspirations, who has now become one of mine. So, thank you, sincerely, George. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry if this is, a bad taste or, whatever, if you don't give a shit about Prince. But I wanted to say something because, like I said, he's been a part of my life for a while. He's one of the soundtracks to my world. When I got a record player, one of the things I knew immediately that I had to buy was this album. So, everybody out there, if you got a glass, raise it, and put on your favorite Prince song, go find somebody, and I hope I see you all laughing in the purple rain someday. Bye.